Thank you, Myron. I can be fierce in my work because I know that Myron has my back, so that helps a lot. Myron is many things, a gifted vocalist, a respected educator, and community leader, among others. But in her role as executive director for the arts in the Boston Public Schools, Myron is the very embodiment of the quality and effectiveness of the effort to expand arts education and arts learning opportunities for students across the city. She's the first to hold this position in Boston. It was made for her, and she for it. And someone already mentioned that she was named quite recently as one of just 13 leaders to learn from nationally by Education Week, and deservedly so. So it's an honor to work with her and with the Community Music Center in the effort to expand arts learning opportunities for children across the city of Boston. So David asked me to talk about the story of BPS arts expansion and the remarkable renaissance of arts education in Boston Public Schools. And I will, because I too follow direction and always do what David tells me. Okay, there's some doubters at this table over here. But I'll also tell it because it's a truly great story of collective action and citywide impact in which CMCB has and continues to play a very major part. But first I have to point out that long before I had the opportunity to work with CMCB as part of a citywide movement, I first experienced them as a parent, a community resident, and a school improvement advocate. The first time came around 2001 when I was a young parent with children in the Boston Public Schools, and a CMCB teaching artist, Wayne Potash, strolled into my son's kindergarten classroom with a guitar over his shoulder and began to teach music. This was at the Rafael Hernandez two-way bilingual school in Eggleston Square, a neighborhood on the edge of Jamaica Plain and Roxbury, where both of our children attended and ultimately graduated from the Boston Public Schools. The second came when, as a working mother, I needed a summer camp for that same boy, and found Community Music Center's Summer Arts program, and then got to watch as truly skilled arts educators like David Small and Patricia Espinoza took my budding visual artist from a family not known for its musical ability, incidentally, and apparently tapped into his inner Ethel Merman, which his parents didn't realize until he stepped up to a microphone at the final camp summer show, threw out his arms, ate the microphone, and belted out the lines of his song. Our third encounter came when I was hired to help launch a nonprofit that focused on galvanizing philanthropy aimed at urban school improvement in Boston. And lo and behold, in that very first year, one of the first proposals that our all-volunteer panel of reviewers selected to appear in the inaugural Advestors Urban Education Investment Showcase in 2003 was none other than Community Music Center, highlighting the talented efforts of the school's outreach program under the leadership of Lucy Jones Saligum. And tonight, I can say that this is the first time I've had the honor and privilege of making remarks at a legacy dinner for an individual and an institution that I so greatly admire. So I can now say that David Lappin and the Community Music Center have been present at several key developmental milestones in my personal and professional life. So thank you, David. And in many ways, I think that is what makes Community Music Center so important to so many people, because the organization that David has so skillfully stewarded for 34 years impacts the lives of so many in deeply personal and engaging ways. So now let me switch gears and talk a little bit about BPS arts expansion and the important role the Community Music Center has played alongside of other community-based arts organizations. Since 2009, the arts expansion effort has led to a dramatic increase in student arts access citywide within the Boston Public Schools. The Central Arts Office, under Myron Parker Brass's skilled leadership since 2011, has transformed its operations to provide improved support to schools and teachers to expand quality arts instruction during the school day in order to reach all children. Public funding has increased substantially, galvanized by private philanthropy and the visibility of the arts expansion effort. This is a sustainable model that puts Boston in the forefront of urban districts nationally expanding arts education. Today, 17,000 more students receive in-school arts education, a nearly 50% growth since 2009. This has been fueled by increased public funding delivered by individual school budgets and the central office, from roughly $15 million in 2009 to nearly $26 million in 2015, supporting the growth of nearly 130 additional full-time teachers, arts teachers in schools, a nearly 75% increase since 2009. In terms of investment, this represents a 5-to-1 return on the private philanthropic funds invested in the same period. And I can tell you, as many of you know, this rarely happens. An equally important part of the story is the role that community-based arts providers and cultural institutions like Community Music Center and their gifted teaching artists have played alongside of in-school arts educators. It is this citywide collaboration among individual schools, BPS as a whole, arts organizations, local and national funders, the mayor's office, and most importantly, families and increasingly youth that have driven BPS arts expansion. At Vesters, following our own equity-focused mission to help urban schools improve, has been privileged to play the role of external facilitator and partner, instigator, creative troublemaker, but working always in close collaboration with the Boston Public Schools. But the real magic here is that this is a multi-stakeholder initiative now in its 7th year with broad ownership beyond any one organization, resulting in a diverse network of adults and a robust public-private partnership acting in the best interests of children. And that is indeed something to celebrate. Later this month, we'll be releasing a case study nationally that documents what happened through BPS arts expansion over the past 7 years. We did this for a couple of reasons. The first is that there is a long-standing narrative, both locally and nationally, in both urban and suburban school systems that laments that arts education is on the decline, especially in public schools. This is unfortunately true in many places, but now factually inaccurate in Boston. So it's important to document that and learn from it to ensure that we continue to make progress. The second reason is that strategies behind complicated multi-year initiatives are always clearer in the rearview mirror. We believe many of the lessons learned can be applied to other issue areas and contexts, both within and outside of Boston. For Vesters' part, we hope to use many of these same strategies in our newest effort focused on the slightly less exciting, but no less important, middle grades math, to increase proficiency in Boston, and in the very near future, a growing effort to expand career technical vocational education options in Boston's high schools, including creative industry pathways in the arts. But tonight I want to highlight a few of the key strategies that helped make arts expansion happen and the role that CMCB played. The first was to engage stakeholders in pursuing an equity strategy, using data to make the case and setting a citywide measurable goal focused on children. One of the first things we did was to conduct the first ever inventory of student art access in every Boston public school by minute, by art discipline. And what we found in the data was random inequity scattered across the city, not concentrated by income, race, culture, or neighborhood. We found schools in one neighborhood providing twice weekly arts to every single one of their students, with a half dozen arts partners working alongside of them, and 6 blocks away, a school that was providing almost no arts instruction with 0 partners and no full-time arts teachers. A conundrum. At the time, only 2/3 of BPS students in pre-K through grade 8 received arts instruction even one time per week, and only a quarter of high school students had access to any arts at all. So we set a goal of getting to 100% of students pre-K to 8 with weekly arts instruction and any increase at all in the high schools. Today, we're at 93% of pre-K to 8 students receiving weekly arts instruction, and high school arts access has more than doubled. So in this room, I don't think I have to make a case for why art is important. But it's worth noting how art can level the playing field of opportunity for Boston's children, and especially for its least advantaged children. By working through the schools, we're able to reach the largest number of students, and in so doing, meet the needs of a significant population of high-needs students. The BPS, Boston Public Schools, educates 3/4 of the city's children, school-age children. 74% of them are high needs, including students with disabilities, English language learners, and students from economically disadvantaged families. Economists Richard Murnane and Greg Duncan documented that from 1972 to 2006, high-income families increase the amount they spend on enrichment activities for their children, from arts to sports to robotics, by 150%, while the spending of lower income families grew by 57% over the same time period. But by 2006, that gap was 10,000 in the upper income families compared to roughly 2,000 in lower income families. These are the opportunity gaps behind the achievement gaps that we read about so much in the papers, and it is critical that we close them. Making art available to students during the school day opens pathways they may not otherwise have access to, even with Boston's rich array of arts organizations. If a child never learns to play the tin whistle in the 3rd grade, or to paint on real canvas, or to block a dance, how will they know that they want to come to CMCB for instrument lessons or for the summer program? How will they know to go to Zoomix in East Boston to produce music, or Artists for Humanities to make art? Art has the power to inspire and transform lives. All the more reason that it should be accessible to our most vulnerable children. The second strategy we used was to leverage philanthropy to incentivize change behavior against the citywide goal of expanding equitable arts education access. We created the BPS Arts Expansion Fund, which made grants to schools and nonprofits like Community Music Center that partnered to expand arts instruction during the school day. Using Boston's school-based budgeting model, we encourage schools to increase their allocations for arts teachers as well. So the only proposals we would fund through the Arts Expansion Fund were those that move the needle toward the goal of 100% access for children. If a school cut an arts position from their school, they couldn't apply for a grant. The third strategy was to focus on highlighting best practices in arts education and delivery models in schools, and to then work with schools, frontline educators, and arts partners to build sustainable models. We looked at how the arts-rich schools did it, what barriers they overcame, and then what it would take for more schools to do that. And that's where Community Music Center really came in. Community Music Center was featured as a best practice model in the seminal report that launched the initiative in 2009. They were identified as such because of how effectively they worked in schools alongside of in-school arts educators, because of their commitment and willingness to be flexible, adaptive, and focus on the needs of the schools while delivering best-in-class music instruction. This both-and approach, not either-or, became one of the key strategies of BPS Arts Expansion, with teaching artists from arts and cultural organizations working alongside of in-school arts educators, not to supplant the role of teachers who are vitally needed inside every building, but to extend and complement by range of discipline, by diversity of experience, and by the sheer number of students that they could reach, the work of in-school arts educators. And then to help build sequential mastery pathways for those students as well. And CMCB is at the forefront of this work. In 2003, when they first appeared at our showcase, they were in 15 schools. Today, they're in 22 schools and 5 satellites after school, reaching over 5,500 students every week. Today, they're the largest arts partner within the BPS Arts Expansion and a leader in the growing effort to deepen sequential instruction and mastery pathways in and out of school for a growing number of young people who become passionate about pursuing music as their artistic discipline. David Lappin was one of the first leaders of established nonprofits in the arts space who looked at us and said, I actually think you have the right idea, and here are some ways that we can help. He was a champion of impact that extended beyond those directly served by CMCB. This speaks to a broader civic mission and a set of values that sets David Lappin apart in leadership of nonprofit institutions in the city of Boston. And it is absolutely. And it is his values that animate this organization. Institutions like CMCB are pillars on the community landscape, defining community quite broadly. The artistic community, the education community, and the neighborhood community of the South End. Broad citywide strategies to strengthen the community fabric of Boston rely on organizations like CMCB to execute the direct work that changes lives and sustains community. In the early days of the arts expansion effort, if I looked across a room in countless meetings and saw David nodding his head at me, then I knew we were on the right track and were aimed at accomplishing something quite special. And what's most important about these accomplishments is that they are shared, that they are owned and actualized by a broad and diverse range of community players, inclusive of Community Music Center, and extending in all directions through and beyond the schools. Most importantly, we know that the vision is carried by families and youth across this city. Through parent opinion polls and youth voice surveys, we repeatedly hear that students want art during the school day and they want more of it. Looking forward, there's a continued role for CMCB and other arts and cultural institutions citywide. Our first goal was to raise the floor in terms of equitable access. And now, as Myron said earlier, we have the opportunity to raise the roof. And CMCB can be an important part of that. Once weekly art is just scratching the surface of equitable access, but so much more is required to release children's true passions in pursuing an artistic discipline. We also have to remain vigilant in sustaining the increased public investment that we've achieved. And to do that, we need a broad array of stakeholders in this effort. And if art is your passion, you can get involved in supporting Community Music Center, and through them, you can also impact the broader citywide movement to sustain and continue to expand arts education for the benefit of all of the city's children. As I was preparing for tonight's remarks, I had an opportunity to read through some of the historic documents that David shared with me. And I have to say, I've always had an affinity for settlement houses. My aunt worked at the Hull House in Chicago, founded by the pioneering Jane Addams. My husband worked at United South End Settlements in the late 70s during a time of great upheaval and transformation in Boston's South End. And I worked at Crittenton Hastings House in Oak Square, a settlement house for low-income women and children. Settlement houses can be tremendously dynamic institutions that respond to changing community needs in the neighborhoods around them. I think of CMCB, born of 2 settlement houses in the South End over 100 years ago, as a settlement house even today, using arts as its medium. For Community Music Center, music is the medium for outreach and community building, even as it delivers high-quality music instruction and performance opportunities for youth and adults of all ages. The dictionary defines medium as an intervening agency, means, or instrument by which something is conveyed or accomplished. That seems a fitting description of Community Music Center as an essential educational and cultural institution in Boston. And to the extent that settlement houses were originally created to meet the needs of waves of newcomers and immigrants in our largest cities, never has that been more relevant than today. Boston became a majority-minority city in the early 2000s. Roughly a third of city residents are immigrants and newcomers. In the Boston Public Schools, 46% of children come from families where English is not the first language. They speak 75 different languages and come from 139 different home countries. This means that Community Music Center, by remaining true to its roots, is well positioned to continue to evolve and meet the needs of the city around it. And that is the best testament to David's impact. The ultimate test of an effective organizational leader is the strength of the organization that endures. And Community Music Center will endure and thrive in the years ahead, and we all need it to do so. For Community Music Center's centennial in 2010, it offered 100 concerts, most of them free, as a musical gift to the city. Tonight, I would like us all to toast another musical gift to the city, David Lappin.